Hey guys, this is Gabe, and if you've watched any of my videos, I'm a realtor and I've put together this series called Real Estate Chat, and we pretty much discuss what the hell is going on in real estate. We have the conversations of the things that are taboo, and we discuss current events, and we do not hold back on what we're talking about. And this is just the raw and the real, and hopefully it's good information. If you guys are enjoying this information and find this information valuable, please hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the page. It really helps me know that I'm not wasting my time doing these videos. And let's hopefully we can get into all kinds of things in this series that people don't want to talk about and expose the truth. Because if I'm being honest, I think that there's a lot of misguided information out there, and I think that we really need to correct that. So hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe. That'd really help out. Thanks.
Major changes coming soon to the real estate market. Realtor commissions, they are likely to drop to a fraction of what they are now.
So mortgage rates rose last week for the first time in 3 weeks, and as a result, demand came down.
The headline here is the National Association of Realtors, which represents 1.5 million real estate agents nationwide.
The National Association of Realtors has now agreed to rewrite a number of the rules that regulate America's housing industry.
All right, guys, so one of the things I want to talk about today is I was reading through current events and news in real estate, and it came up that there's some information that's out there about what the real estate market's doing. And so in particular, I'm looking at the CNBC.com's website on an article they put out yesterday saying March homes sales dropped despite a surge in supply. Here's why. And I'm not going to get into details. Feel free to visit their website. I think the information is fairly accurate, but what I really want to get into is not necessarily the data, although like I said, I feel the data from what I've looked into and I've investigated, I guess you can call it, on the data, I do think that it's fairly accurate, but I do think that there's a lot of things that you need to factor in, and I think that this title really has it seems shocking to some people, and I don't even know why, right? Because whoever didn't see this coming, honestly, and you follow real estate to any degree, you're just stupid. Like, I'm sorry if that's you, I'm sorry if that offends you, but you either didn't look at the facts for what they are, or you just decided to ignore them. It's one or the other. I mean, there's no way that anybody could sit there and tell me they didn't see this coming. And, you know, it's not doomsday, it's not drastic, and real estate shifts every day. And we have seasons where you have what's called a buyer's market, you have what's called a seller's market, and pretty much it's all based on supply demand, right? A seller's market says, hey, there's a ton of demand, there's not enough supply. A buyer's market says, hey, there's a ton of supply, there's no demand. So that's pretty much how that works. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? But in my opinion, I think that what's happened is that we ended up giving an unrealistic expectation in real estate when we dropped rates to 2 and 3%. And this is the unpopular opinion. I think that as a country, I think that as a people, as a government, I think that we really screwed the pooch on that. I really do. Because I think, like I said, I think we set an unrealistic expectation. I think everybody wants 2 and 3% now, and that's unrealistic. We can't live with a 2 and 3%. And I get it. People can look at it and say, oh, well, why not? Because we can't. That's not the way the world works. I mean, I think that if I'm being completely honest with you, I think rates between 4 and 7% are where it's at. That's where I think that is the fair price point for interest rates, or percentage for interest rates, because I think 8 and higher is just, I think the only reason we hit 8 is because we had to overcompensate. Now, historically, we've had much higher rates, don't get me wrong. And I think that that's honestly a thing where we've had them in the teens in the past, and you can look up that data. It's 100% factual. And I think that a lot of people have just had some misguided expectations of what it needs to look like. And I think a lot of people missed out on the 2 and 3%, and so now they're just jealous. Honestly, it's almost like FOMO came to bite them in the ass, right? And so they decided to not buy when the rates were 2 and 3%, or they couldn't buy rates 2 and 3%. And so now they're butthurt that they couldn't get that rate. So now they don't want to buy at 7 and 8%. Truth is, it is what it is, man. Like, I think it was a bad idea to begin with. I think if we would have left it alone, we would have had a much more stable market. Our politicians wanted to look good. And this is 100% fact. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it, but this is fact. Our politicians wanted to look good during COVID, and the best way they knew how was if we do a surge, if we just get a steroid into the market right now and have a huge influx of real estate movement, that's going to have the biggest bang, and it's going to show people that our economy is moving and we are aggressive and we are strong and we're going to make it. And the truth is, it's all freaking lies, right? Because just like steroids, what happens when you stop taking steroids? It's just not real. It's just not realistic. And it's frustrating that people think it is. People will say, well, it's the cost of housing, not the cost of living. Well, I disagree. I think it's the cost of living. I think our consumer goods are just way too expensive right now. I think we depend way too much on other countries for our consumer goods. And there's plenty of channels that are going to talk to you about made in America and why you should shop local and use mom and pops and all that. And I agree. I think that's what built America. And I think people forget that even Walmart, once upon a time, was a small business. I think that we started to misinterpret what the American dream is, and we've had a sense of entitlement that we don't deserve. Because we've kind of hit a time in life where everything is you snap your fingers and it's right there. And that's really unfortunate because, I actually saw this on a bumper sticker the other day and I loved it. It said, I'm from a generation where when things broke, we fixed it. We didn't replace it, or something to that degree. We just went through this lawsuit where buyers no longer are going to be, well, they still will get commissions likely, but now sellers are going to eventually start jumping on the bandwagon to not provide buyers agents commissions. Here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. Or better said, here's what I see. You remove buyer's agents commissions, but then we turn into a buyer's market where you have all this inventory and no buyers. So now you're literally banking on your realtor being super aggressive with finding buyers. You don't have a choice, right? And I don't care who you are. I don't care how good of a realtor you are. You're not going to have all the buyers in the market. So I'm curious to see how this pans out when we flip into a buyer's market, because the lawsuit's all fine and dandy while we're in a seller's market. But when we hit a buyer's market, I'm very, very curious to see what is going to happen here. Because, and I talked about this in another video. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they came out with this about the commissions and all this yada yada. And like I said, I think it's fair to guess that it's not going to affect as much as maybe I even think it will. But I think it's arrogant and ignorant to assume that the lawsuit is not going to affect us when it converts into a buyer's market, because buyers are going to sit there and say, yeah, sellers are going to want to sell their house and they're not going to have a ton of buyer pools, but buyers are going to say, well, I'm only going to buy your house if you pay my representation or else I'm not doing it. So think about it from that perspective, right? And that's the beauty of supply and demand, right? And I'm actually looking forward to that. And the reason I'm looking forward to that is because I want to see all these crybabies and whiners that were out there. And I'm not talking about the consumer. I'm talking about the politicians, the attorneys, the people who should know better. That's who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about homeowners and stuff. That's not really what it is. I want to see what their perspective is going to be when now everybody that they quote unquote saved money for is looking at it saying, damn, all that money you saved, all that crap you went through, and I'm still having to pay a buyer's agent commission, because if I don't, there's 3 houses in my block that are for sale, and John down the street decided he's going to pay a buyer's commission. He went under contract in 3 days. Joe's been on the market for 6 months, refuses to put a buyer's co-op in there. Oh, and 2 blocks away, Cindy put her house on the market, and she ended up putting a buyer's commission after a month on the market, and she ended up under contract. Listen, I know that that's what they were trying to avoid, but that's literally going to show you that the truth is nobody in this world likes to work for free. You don't. I don't. So we'll see what's going to happen. But like I said, I really thought this article was cool. And go on CNBC.com and read it, because I think there is some good data. Again, I would fact check the data, just because you can't believe anything in the media these days. But the headline, I think, is 100% on the money, that sales are dropping and inventory is rising. And that literally defines the beginning of a buyer's market. Here's what happens historically. Historically, in a buyer's market, buyer gets what's called concessions, right? And so buyer concessions means closing costs are paid for, certain expenses. And it just depends, right? Concessions are paid up to a certain percentage or up to a certain amount by the seller. And I think that more and more we're going to see in the contracts, when people submit offers, that this offer is contingent on the seller paying this percentage to a buyer's agent. I mean, it just is, because just like the seller has the right to say, I'm not going to pay a buyer's agent, the buyer has the right to negotiate it into the contract and say, you're going to pay my buyer's agent or I'm not buying your house. And so that's something, again, I'm very curious to see what that's going to look like long run, because I do think that we're very misguided as to how it's all going to come down. And again, I don't know. I don't know the details. I know that, it's a good time to really sit back and evaluate what it's going to look like, because squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? And everybody's complaining about interest rates, and interest rates spiked up to like 8, and they've since dropped. They're usually within the 6s and 7s right now. That's kind of what the numbers we're looking at, is 6 and 7s as of April 2024. And for the most part, right? And again, I'm not a mortgage lender, and every situation is unique. So I will just, kind of give that disclaimer there. But for the most part, we're seeing 6 and 7s. And so I think that what's ultimately going to happen, we're going to end up in a position where we put the carriage before the horse, because of the situation. It was a situational scenario. And I think that we're going to end up, it's going to hurt pretty hard once that starts to flip. If you live in a subdivision where all the houses are pretty much the same, and 3 houses down, there's the exact same model as yours, but they're offering a buyer's commission, and that's 3% less that the buyer has to come out of pocket, or 2.5% or 2 or 1% less that the buyer has to come out of pocket, guess what that buyer's going to do? They're going to sacrifice, if they wanted, let's say your house is in the corner and that one's not, they're going to sacrifice that corner lot for those thousands of dollars they're going to save. This is just reality. So good luck, because that's where we're going, and that's what I see is going to happen. More importantly, like I said, I'm curious to see how they're going to address it and how they're going to deal with it. That's what I don't have the answer to. That's what I don't know. I know that what will happen is, I know that buyers are going to become more aggressive and say, we want this paid for, we want this funded. I don't know how policy is going to adjust to the new squeaky wheel. I say this over and over again. I love real estate. I love being a realtor. I hate when politics get involved in my business, though. In any business. Because all politicians do is fill their pockets with money. I don't care. I mean, take it for what it is. It's the freaking truth. You don't have to like it, but it's the truth. The majority of politicians make more money outside of their salary than in their salaries. I get it. Oh, no, they don't. Yeah, they do. They just know how to hide it better than you and I. They have the right connections. The government stepping in I forgot who coined this. It was a president that said this. That said one of the scariest things that that an American can hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." We've lost that, and so now this is broken. I can't replace it. You fix it. I don't want to fix it. You fix it. Either fix it or replace it. So, unfortunately, we've hit a time in life where everybody goes crying to mommy and daddy. And in our case, mommy and daddy's the government. And that's a really scary thought. That's a very scary thought. And I think real estate has kind of hit, I think a lot of real estate has hit that now. And I think that we are now on, here's the thing. I think real estate was not on the radar for a very long time because it was just kind of a business that was ran the same way for years and years and years. And there was never a reason to. But just like everything else, it ended up on the radar, and now we have the spotlight. And it's stupid. It's just stupid. It just is. I'm sorry. There's no way around it. It's stupid. We offer a service that helps people. At the end of the day, that's what we do. And if you're a good realtor, you help people. And you know what? If you can do it better, go do it. Go do it yourself. I just had that conversation yesterday with somebody. Well, I can sell my house. And I said, good for you. Go try. Go try. You might be able to sell it in a seller's market, but good luck if you're trying to sell in a buyer's market, right? I will say that looking forward, I do see it converting into a buyer's market, which I think is going to flip that lawsuit on its ass.